It's time for sports with Andrei Paulet, head wrestling coach at City Kickboxing. And I know a lot of people will recognize you from, being in the background of various City Kickboxing videos over the past few years. First of all, obviously, you're from Romania. How'd you end up at City Kickboxing? That's, it's a little bit far to come.
Yeah. So I moved in New Zealand in 2005. Me and my family moved to New Zealand in 2005. My dad got here with a work contract, and then we decided to come over. I started wrestling when I was back home in Romania at age 8. So when I came in 2005, I came and lived in West Auckland in Hawaii on the farm. It wasn't what I expected, and obviously I came from a sporting background, competing all the time, basically every weekend, every month, and then I come to New Zealand and I live on the farm, and that was a bit different, and it's not what I expected. But luckily I started searching online, and I found a wrestling club in Newmarket, and I went there and I started, training there twice a week. And maybe in 2007, I started doing jiu-jitsu, Brazilian jiu-jitsu, and that's where I met Eugene. He was a white belt as well. That's where we were both white belts, and that's where I met him. And then just after that, about a year after that, I got granted the New Zealand citizenship to be able to represent New Zealand overseas for wrestling. So I've done a lot of tournaments, competed all around the world for New Zealand, and did Commonwealth Games in 2010. And after that, Eugene reached out to me, maybe around 2011. He reached out to me if I could come and help him out for his MMA fights with some wrestling, because he knew me. I was a wrestler to start with, and that's when I went back to City Kickboxing and I started training with Eugene. And then I've always wanted to fight MMA as well. So I had my own fights, and basically that's where it all started. It was just me coming back to train Eugene, and then from there continued till now.
Was a little bit strange for you when you did get to New Zealand, because obviously wrestling's not a huge sport down here.
Yeah, absolutely. It was a big shock. I mean, I came and I felt like all that hard work that I put back home as a kid, and I thought it's all gone. But it all worked out really well. I found the right people, the right connection that helped me on my journey in New Zealand. So I'm very grateful for all these people that I met along my journey. Yeah.
Eugene's a black belt in jiu-jitsu now. How did your jiu-jitsu journey go?
Yeah, so I became a blue belt in 2000, just when I started, really. A few months after I started, I became a blue belt, but then I got given the opportunity to start competing in wrestling and represent New Zealand. So then I put jiu-jitsu on hold, and I basically just started training wrestling full-time, and I came back to MMA later in 2011 after I finished my wrestling career. That's when I came back to, and I have not trained jiu-jitsu much after that, but I'm still around it for sure.
What was it like competing at the Commonwealth Games in 2010?
Yeah, it was, what an amazing experience for me. When you dedicate all your life, your childhood. Obviously, I'm in Romania. We train, and when you do a sport in an ex-communist country, you do it properly, and it's very demanding. So, Commonwealth Games for me was a great experience. A great experience, and all that hard work paid off, and I'm very grateful to be able to do that.
How did you find the transition to MMA?
I fell in love with MMA before I came to New Zealand. So one of my buddies, my friends in Romania, he was one of the first kind of MMA fighters that started getting into MMA. He was a boxer. So I remember him giving me a DVD one day, and he said, "Oh, have a look at this." And it was basically, the beginning of the UFC 1, 2. And, when I looked at it and, I first watched the sport, I just fell in love with it straight away. And I remember telling to myself that one day, I'll either do this, or I'll be around this, because this sport is, it's awesome. And I just fell in love with it. And look now, 10, 15 years or no more, I'm living in New Zealand and, really experiencing it all. So yeah, it's pretty crazy.
How did your own fights go?
Yeah, so I had 4 MMA fights. I won 2 and lost 2. I had a kickboxing fight as well. Yeah, definitely, great experiences. Some didn't go my way, but that's just the way the sport is it's not all rainbows and sunshines. It's a very hard sport. So, but I enjoyed it.
How different is it training wrestling for MMA as opposed to just training wrestling for wrestling? Like, if you can simplify it at all, what are the major differences in the two?
Yeah, well, one thing that I realized early in my wrestling MMA kind of career, is that they're just 2 different sports, and you cannot use wrestling in a fist fight just the way you would use wrestling in a wrestling match. So, and I've learned that first because I've started doing it myself. So I started doing MMA, and I've learned a lot of things by doing it myself. And obviously with MMA, the fight starts standing up and doesn't start down. So you will have to adapt. You have to adapt to those things. You cannot just use your normal wrestling style. You have to learn your distance. You have to learn stand up to be able to use your wrestling. If you've got no stand up, and you just come from a pure wrestling background, in today's age of the sport, you're not going to make it. So you have to learn and adapt 100%, change it around.
Just on the MMA scene, obviously you're in Arizona right now, big card this weekend for a couple of the boys from City Kickboxing. I know Israel has said in the past that you're his preferred roommate for when you're traveling, that things don't generally go too well if he's rooming with Eugene. Can you explain a little bit about what yourself and Israel Adesanya are like, and why he prefers to room with you?
Yeah, I think this started back in Perth when he debuted his first fight there, and I think we just we gelled together. I guess we keep a good energy. For me, fight week is all about the fighters, and same with Eugene and all the other coaches. We want to make sure the fighters feel good in the fight week, So me and Israel have no dramas. The energy in the room is good all the time, and it just became a if it ain't broken, why fix it? So we just feel good, and we've got our own kind of rituals that we do before fights, and that's been paying off, and we just stick to it. But now in Arizona, we all have different rooms, so I sometimes just go in and check in and see how he's going, and just trying to keep it the same. But nothing special. It's just we felt good from the beginning, and we just keep it going. Yeah.
Are you able to explain any of those pre-fight rituals, or do you want to keep those on the down low?
No, I mean this. I think this is something that me and Israel have it, and we're just gonna keep it between me and him for now. Yeah.
All good, man. And with Israel, a lot of people talk about his wrestling or lack of wrestling background and see it as some sort of a weakness because for most of his UFC career, he hasn't been tested on the ground until his last fight against Jan Blachowicz. What did you make of that fight, and particularly those last two rounds, and how Jan was able to not only get Israel down away from the cage, but how he was able to keep him there?
Yeah. Well, first of all, I feel like I have to say this, but you nowadays, in today's age of mixed martial arts and UFC, the highest level, you cannot become a UFC champion if you don't have wrestling, if you're not well-rounded, if you're not a well-rounded fighter anymore. So people, obviously saying that Israel's wrestling is not good enough after the last fight. It's got nothing to do with what's his level of competency as a wrestler. As his level of wrestling. So he's the middleweight champion of the world for a reason. And the last fight with Jan, the same thing. It's just like any other fights. This is the highest level of competition, and you make a couple little mistakes, and the fight can change drastically. So I think in the last fight, Israel, I felt he felt that he was about to get Jan out of there. We could see that Jan was getting tired. Maybe his pressure was a little bit too much. He was not as patient as he usually is, and he made those little mistakes, and that's what happened. But I like the idea of people thinking that Israel's wrestling is not up to date, because that just helps us, when they will get shocked in the cage. So I've always enjoyed the moment when the fighters Israel face, and then when they realize they can't take him down, or they come holding down, the shock that you see on their eyes, it's always a good feeling to see that. So I think we are good.
Yeah, it's interesting. I remember watching his first fight in Perth against Rob Wilkinson, and just the amount of times that Rob tried to take him down, and just if he got him down, he couldn't hold him there, and just he very quickly started to look defeated. Like that's like, as a coach, that has to be exactly what you want to see in an opponent, right?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, that's a best example, and then all the other fights as well that happened after that. Things only got better. So yeah, we are pretty confident in Israel's abilities to wrestle.
What do you guys make of the rematch against Marvin Vettori? He looks like he's vastly improved from when you met him last time. His last couple of fights have been pretty impressive wins, very dominant, a lot of wrestling as well. Just what do you make of the rematch, and how do you see things playing out any differently if they are going to be different at all?
Yeah, I mean, Marvin Vettori has improved a lot since the last fight. I feel he changed his wrestling better. The loss that he had with Israel last time, he got hungry after that, and he's been on a roll. So he's a dangerous threat to us, and he's very hungry. This is the one chance opportunity for him to win the UFC belt and become a champion. So all our fights from now on, all these hungry contenders are dangerous. So I feel the fight is going to be competitive, but I still feel Israel has kept that distance between them. Like I feel like Israel is still a step or two ahead. So yeah, you don't really know how the fight will go till it starts, and we usually get to have a feel with Israel in the first 30 seconds to 1 minute, how he's gonna go. So I guess we'll have to wait and see. But we are confident.
With Brad also fighting on this card, it's an interesting one with Brad now that he's facing Drew Dober, who's predominantly a striker, who's not Gregor Gillespie, and he's not going to be trying to take him down inside the first minute of the fight. Preparing for the Gregor fight, how was that with Brad? I know he was very excited to test himself against a wrestler, and how have things, I guess, changed now that it's Drew Dober and not Gregor Gillespie in front of him?
Yes, but Brad's last 3 fights, well, a lot of his fights were against wrestlers, and Brad, developed a lot from these fights, and so it would have been a great timing, for Brad to showcase, he's wrestling against Gregory, and he's developed to a point where he was ready for something like that. But obviously that fight unfortunately went down, and when I heard that he's fighting Drew, I thought, I was pretty excited because I wanted to see Brad fighting someone who just stand up a little bit more. That's Brad. He's a world-class stand-up fighter, right? So I think even in this fight, there can be wrestling involved in it. So they both mixed martial artists. So Brad has made a lot of improvements. He can wrestle. He can, defend wrestling. So it's going to be I think it's going to be a very exciting fight. I'm very excited for this one.
Of all the people you've trained at City Kickboxing, which of the fighters has the best wrestling? Doesn't have to be a name that people know. Just who is the best wrestler? Just name drop someone.
Oh, hey, you're putting me on the spot now, eh?
Yeah, exactly.
They all are good at different things, when it comes to wrestling. I cannot just put my name down because they're all good at different things. We've got Jan Blachowicz. He started as a wrestler, so he's mixing up his wrestling with MMA pretty well now. He's gelled it together. Same with Dan Hooker. He's improved a lot. You can see it in his last fights. He's not just a stand-up fighter anymore. He's won, a couple fights because of using his wrestling. So I feel all the boys have developed a lot in the last 4 or 5 years. So they're all good at different aspects of wrestling. So I'm not gonna just showcase one name. Yeah.
Now that you mentioned Fau Vake, I guess we should touch on, obviously it's pretty horrible news for the gym in recent weeks with Fau Vake obviously succumbing to the coward punch a couple of weeks ago and passing away. I mean, what's the emotion been like in the gym, and do you bring that with you into this fight week?
Yeah, obviously, it was a tragic news, when we heard about, what happened. The last, 2 weeks of camp were pretty intense. We were training, but then going to the hospital and, be there for John and his family. It was, in a way, it was also cool to see how tight we are as a team and how special our team is, in those times, those hard times. But then we would just return back at the gym, and I think I've heard Eugene saying, the gym is it's our safe place, it's where we can leave all our problems outside, everything outside, and then we can just go in there and just focus on ourselves and the training that, we have to do to prepare for this fight. So, it's been tough, but we're gonna get over this as a team, and we will support the Vake family, you know, for the rest of our life. So it's, yeah, what can you do?
For everyone watching, we're going to drop some links down below in the YouTube channel for the give a little for supporting Fau's family. Obviously, he had a young daughter, so if those watching can afford to drop a little bit to help her future, then that would be great. Back to fight week, just how has the week played out in Arizona, and how is the general feeling around the camp heading into this one?
Yeah, so I arrived here on Sunday in US, so it was Monday New Zealand time, and the boys arrived on Thursday, so they came in earlier. I think just to get used to the climate. It took me about 2-3 days to get over the jet lag. It was a different one this time. So even the boys were not feeling 100% only after maybe 2-3 days. So it was good that they came on Thursday. And this week it's only been focused on, you know, just our usual fight week rituals where we train once a week, once a day, and we're just trying to keep everything sharp. Go over, you know, game plan, keep everything fresh. The boys are feeling really good. We had another session last night, and the last session is going to be today, and then tomorrow is the weigh-in. So yeah, everything has been going great energy, no dramas. It's good. We're looking good.
Is there a story behind Brad Riddell's new beard, or has he just decided to grow out a beard?
No, I think he just decided to grow up a beard. Yeah. He's he just apparently he wants to let it grow for another year. So we'll see what the end product will be. Yeah.
Okay, man. Well, I'll leave it at that and let you get back to it. I know you got a press conference to drag Israel to in a couple hours' time. Thank you very much for your time. As always, buddy, good to chat with you, and hope everything goes well over the weekend.
Cool. Thank you, brother.